I think Janet's been here before, but let me read this because I'm impressed. Janet Fultz is a board certified licensed professional counselor. The thing I don't want to do in life is counsel more people. I admire you for that. State approved supervisor, native of Stillwater, attained her bachelor's and master's at Oklahoma State. Her father was a professor in mechanical engineering. Yay. In the architect's office as well. There you go. She's been with PCYS for 21 years. Zowie. All right. It was the agency's first clinical director and the first female executive director. Way to go. Way to go. She serves on various committees, etc. She's a mother of 4 daughters, grandmother of 7. Zowie. Enjoys gardening, family, music, and pets. But most importantly, I asked when we sort of arrived here, and I must say Ann's the one that spends most of the time with PCYS. I'm just the driver. I asked Norm McNichol one time, so what is this PCYS that Ann is starting to give money to? He said, when you're a policeman and you don't know what to do with some kids and you got a really tough home environment, you can take them to PCYS. Let me tell you, that's something we need to have here. So it's my pleasure to introduce Janet Fultz.
Thank you, Jim. I'm going to try to do this. I want to say Jim is a little, underplaying what his role with us. He and Ann have been great supporters of ours for a long time, and they've done some videos for us recently to help promote our fundraiser that's coming up. I became executive director without really looking for the job, and I was asked to consider it. And at that time, I followed a guy that had been with us for not quite a year. The rest of the time of the agency had been very stable, and we had a guy for about a year, and the board came and asked if I would consider the position. And so that first year, I just kind of sat there till midnight every night trying to figure out what I was doing. And I decided one night about 11 o'clock that we needed an advisory board. And I reached out to Ann Halligan and to Ann Hargis, and surprising to me, they both called me back right away. And so they are our founding members of our advisory board, and Ann and Jim have been great supporters, as I mentioned. Payne County Youth Services has been around 49 years. We actually have to plan a 50th year celebration next year that we're looking forward to. And the agency was created around the idea of setting up a youth shelter and provide counseling in the schools. Back in the 70s, that was, kind of a new novel idea. And so driven by community leaders here in Stillwater, that's kind of how we got our start. Since then, we have continued to use the shelter, and our counseling services are still our kind of our guiding light, what we are all about. And then we've added a lot of other services around those as times have changed, needs of our communities have changed, and just trying to meet those needs of each of our communities that we serve. We have counselors that go to these schools in 9 different school districts every week, as well as providing counseling through our outpatient services, kiddos at the shelter. And we also have a lot of what we call prevention and diversion programs. First-time offender, we've added a suicide prevention program. We would love to provide that to you all at some point in time when you have it. Takes about an hour, and that is really helping people become gatekeepers, to have information about knowing how to identify someone who might be at risk, and to have the tools and the be empowered to kind of intervene with someone if you need to. We've been offering that for a couple of years. As you all know, that is a huge high risk for especially kiddos between the ages of 15 and 35. That is the second leading cause of death for folks in that category. So we're really trying to get out ahead of that and provide a lot of information to our community members. If you have faith-based organizations or anybody else that you're a part of, just let us know. We'll be happy to train those folks as well. We've added a kid-friendly version of that training that we've just started in the last few months. And so there is the adult and the youth-friendly version. Some of the other programming that we have, of course, many of you are familiar with the shelter. I know a lot of you have been at the shelter and volunteered with Day of Caring or projects that the Rotary Club has taken on. You all have provided funding for our organization, some special projects over the last few years, remodeling a couple of rooms out there, building some bookshelves, different things that you all have done, for which we're very, very grateful. I kind of wanted to give you a little update on kind of how we have navigated the pandemic and the needs, emerging needs of our community. But before I go into that, because I'm afraid I'm going to forget, is on your tables, you have a lot of information. And one of the things that we are doing right now is our fundraiser. We had to cancel it last year. Of course, it was scheduled for April, so obviously that went away. And this year we're really excited because we are providing a hybrid opportunity, kind of like the folks on Zoom with us now. You can attend the event. It'll be at the McKnight Center, of course, following all their great guidelines, and they have figured out how many people they can have in the performance hall that's safe and distanced. We will have boxed meals. Obviously, we're not able to have, big tables like we normally would do. And if you want to attend virtually, you'll be able to drive by, pick up your catered boxed meal and take that home, and then watch our talent show. That will be our entertainment. We have one of your members has sent in an audition for the talent show, and we have about 17 auditions up on our website. Cheryl Pickens. Yeah. She and a gentleman there, it's a singing piece. And we have everything from, I think we have an 8-year-old to a gentleman that I don't know how old he is, but he's not 8. So it's really going to be a fun time. What you have the opportunity to do now is to vote on our website, $1 a vote. The 10 auditions who receive the most votes will then perform that evening on stage. And again, you can be there in person to watch those performances or watch online. So we're really trying to provide a safe but fun opportunity for the community, and of course, raise funds to take care of our kiddos. So take those home with you, get online and vote tonight. That's the easiest thing you can do. And we appreciate your support. Like everybody, when COVID came along, we had, emergency plans and policies and things, but obviously not quite for a pandemic. Our biggest goal has always been to continue our services and keep our kiddos and our families safe. As you can imagine, running an emergency youth shelter in the middle of a pandemic is a little bit of a challenge. And we were fortunate enough to be able to really quickly order in protective equipment, train our staff on some things, added some policies where, pretty much nobody in or out except staff. The systems that kind of feed shelters and move kids around the state tried really hard to maintain kiddos in one setting more than they might normally do. I'm hoping that's going to be one of the things that, we all kind of talk about going back to normal, but I think there's some things that maybe we don't need to go all the way back to, that maybe weren't working as well. And obviously, one of the things we know about kiddos is we don't want to move them more often than possible because every move is an additional level of trauma. So we have maintained that facility, had a lot of protocols when somebody did come in, staff testing, all that kind of thing. We did really, really well up until January. And in January, we got hit really hard. We had to actually shut the whole facility for 10 days, which, like I say, we got that far because I just simply didn't have enough staff that were well to maintain it. Luckily, our system had stood up what we call a COVID shelter in Chickasha, so that when we did have kiddos in our facilities that tested positive or had a known exposure, that young person could be moved to that facility where they had higher level medical care and, could do some real quarantining and that kind of thing. The good thing is we only had 2 kiddos that had to go that route. The good thing is that as soon as they were medically cleared, they came back to our shelter. And so that's a real important part of what the system has done, again, to try to maintain some continuity for our kiddos. Our counseling services has been another kind of a challenge. Like I mentioned, we have 9 different school districts. I promise you all 9 of them had a different idea on how to handle a pandemic. So when we had schools that, maybe weren't quite as quick to jump on some precautions, it was a little more difficult to ask my staff to go into some of those settings. We were able to get all of our counseling clients, about 100 at a time usually, transferred to telehealth within about 10 days. And so we're real proud of that as well. And we've continued many of our other group services and that kind of thing, kind of hybridized, whether it's a Zoom thing into the schools or our staff going to certain places. So it's been a challenge. We were fortunate to have some federal dollars come down that through some of our major federal grants that recognize extra needs and expenses for COVID related responses. And so that has assisted us as well. Our goal is to, like I said earlier, help keep kids and families safe and healthy, help them through recovery processes. Many of our kids have experienced abuse or neglect, not all. And so it's kind of what we're here to do. I wondered if you all had questions or, yes, sir.
Could you, how many do you interact with a year? How many do you house? How long are they with you?
Okay.
Average.
Yeah. So in our shelter, we average around 100 kiddos a year. They might be with us for an individual young person might be with us for anywhere from a few days, weeks, months. Many are in and out over years. We don't get to decide where those kiddos go. We provide the sheltering and counseling and supportive services while they're with us. They do attend school while they're with us. Stillwater Public Schools has that primary responsibility. And then again, before the pandemic, if a young person could attend school and maybe their hometown is Cushing or Perkins or whatever, then we have the ability to get them to those home schools if that's the best place for them to be. In our counseling services, clinically, we are seeing around 300 kiddos a year through that service. And then in our groups with the young people, we're around, so you had to ask me a question I didn't think about today. I think it's around 6,000 a year that we're serving in life skills groups. Some of those provided in the schools, some of them in other venues. And then community education is around 40,000 a year that we interact with. With our suicide prevention program, it's kind of what we're doing is a little bit unique. There's other preventions out there that use the same QPR evidence-based training that we use, but how we're doing it is a little unique. And we've actually been asked to train across the state with veterinary groups and educators and some other folks there as well. One of the critical things about our services is that everything is free. No one has to have a certain kind of insurance. They don't have to have sooner care for any of the services. We do have a couple of contracts with Stillwater Public Schools, but for the most part, services to the schools are also free. Lots of barriers, of course, to mental health and the kind of services that we provide. And so by our counselors going out to the schools, we are helping with, transportation barriers, being out and open about what we do helps with, there's still a lot of stigma around mental health. And those free services just makes a huge difference to people being able to access help. That is why, one of the many reasons that we are dependent upon fundraisers and to some degree and support of organizations such as yours. Lots of volunteers as well. We have about 400 volunteers a year that help us. Yes, sir.
So could you describe a couple of cases of kids that come to the shelter?
Sure. The question was talk about a case of how kiddos come into the shelter and kind of what we do there. It can be kind of everything. So there's not a typical situation, but oftentimes a young person will be removed from their home by the Department of Human Services or Juvenile Justice. Sometimes that's an ongoing investigation. Sometimes it's an immediate response and police go in and remove the kiddos. We also run the Safe Place program. I think y'all have probably seen the big yellow diamond signs. That is any of those businesses, fire stations, schools, a young person can self-identify that they're not safe at home. And that way they come to our shelter and then we can get, law enforcement and DHS and folks involved to do the investigation and see what needs to happen next. But typically, police officer may come into the driveway. Sometimes we know they're coming, sometimes we don't, and have a kiddo or 3 or 4 with them. And we welcome them into the facility, get some information. If they're a safe place, kiddo, and the parents don't know they're there yet, then we contact that parent or guardian, let them know they are with us so they know that their child is safe. But that child is not allowed to contact their parents until they appear in front of the court. Then the court determines, what those level of risk might be. So kiddos come into the shelter. Often they don't have a whole lot with them. We have clothes and crafts and games and all the kinds of things to keep them entertained and help them through that transition. Our shelter is a very home-like environment. I don't know if you guys have been there lately. There's a group called the Friends of the Shelter that has established themselves and has provided a lot of support and updates recently, and furniture and new flooring and things like that to the facility, and we're very grateful for them. So when the kiddo comes in, we have those, areas to help them feel safe and welcomed. Go through the process to kind of see what they might need as far as their educational needs. We have a nurse that will come out within 3 days and do a basic screening to make sure that if our young person needs anything, then we get them to whatever that specialty might be. Their day is kind of like any other kid's day. They don't always all like that. They don't necessarily like having a bedtime or things like that. But our staff is really highly trained in trauma response and in what we call positive youth development, so that if a young person has some sort of a outburst, or maybe is just very introverted because of what their experience has been, that we're able to help them, participate and have some level of confidence in the facility. The kiddos eat family style, which I think is really important. Not only does it bring them to the table to have some of that, camaraderie, but it also allows them to learn some skills. We think we're doing a good thing. They don't necessarily want to do the dishes, but they learn how to do some of those things and take care of their room. And all the while, our staff is working with whoever has legal guardianship of them to determine how we can facilitate them moving on into that next phase. Mhm.
So, what's your capacity?
Yeah, so the question is about capacity. We are licensed for 17 young people between 7 and 18 years of age. We typically don't take kids younger than 4, but if DHS places them there, then we can do that. The typical occupancy, it varies greatly. Like I say, about that 100 kids a year. I think our statistic for this last year was about 30 days average stay. But when you look at that, that's based on young people that are there 2 or 3 days and young people that are there maybe 18 months. We want to really be able to provide what they need to reduce those moves I mentioned earlier, so that they aren't being moved around, as long as they are comfortable in maintaining and getting what they need at our facility. Do you have something? Oh, okay.
I have a question from Zoom asking about your annual budget and how much changed over the last 5 years.
Well, we are right now about 1.8 million. About 2,468, 800,000 of that is federal dollars that we bring in from Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level. One of the important things that the community provides is match dollars so that we can bring those dollars here to Stillwater and to Payne County. That those grants allow us to do a lot of services, our transitional living program, and supplement our other services that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. 5 years, we had run right around 950,000 for a very long time. And then about 1.2. So we've been steadily increasing that budget. Yes.
Do the children, if they return to their parents, or are they?
Yeah, so the state's primary directive is always to try to reunify with their family of origin. Obviously, that sometimes doesn't happen. And so our facility is that stopgap that allows the kiddos to be safe and, you know, have a childhood while those things are kind of being determined. A lot of times, a young person will be placed maybe with a family member for a while the parents might be working a treatment plan if they needed to get some parenting skills or a better living environment or whatever it might be for that the parents need to do. And so the system's mandate is to always try to go with kinship first. So they will do a lot of investigation, see if there's a family member that they can place the kiddo with first. They can then go to foster home if that doesn't work, or straight to foster homes from our facility. A lot of times, honestly, what happens is the kiddos will go to a placement and for whatever reason, it doesn't last. Either there were things going on there that the investigators didn't pick up on before they placed the young person. Maybe the young person didn't feel comfortable there, or sometimes the placement adults feel like they've, don't want to continue with that. So those are really some of the really hard, sad cases, because every time a kiddo goes into something expecting that this is going to be home and that doesn't happen for them, that's a huge trauma and loss for those kids. Yes, sir.
With our schools here in Stillwater, when the pandemic was closed, much form of your clients who consistently working on Zoom and it was in the virtual
Yeah, so the question is about the schools being closed and not being able to provide counseling in person there. We've been pretty successful. I would say 97% of our clients have continued. We had to jump around pretty quickly and figure out how to provide some internet access and some devices to some families that didn't have those. We were able to provide some tablets to some families. Sometimes we were able to negotiate with some of the internet providers that were making some services free during the pandemic. We had one family that we gave loaned a tablet to, and the parent would drive the kiddo to, this is not in Stillwater, but to that school so that they could sit in the parking lot and access services that way. It was a big change for our staff as well as our clients. We have some clients that don't want to go back to in-person. Sometimes that's easier for the parents to not have to transport them. Sometimes it's just that, they've gotten comfortable with that. Our preference is always in person, but we also provided extra training to our staff on telehealth so that, they could make that work as best as possible. Stillwater Schools, of course, is a great partner to us, very much a symbiotic relationship, and has helped with facilitating those things as well. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Our transitional living program is funded largely by federal dollars, some of our other state dollars, and private donations. Essentially, we target young people who, for whatever reason, are not able to make that jump into the languages transitioning into adulthood. A lot of those kiddos have had a lot of trauma. Some have been in systems, some never were. And so they don't have the skills oftentimes. They have had maybe really negative examples in their life about how to, keep a home, maintain a job, finish school, that kind of thing. So our program is for young people 18 to 23 years of age. That is also based on a lot of research that demonstrates that if we get to them during that time period and they receive the right services, work through a lot of their trauma and counseling and support, and learn a lot of life skills, that they are more likely to be able to go on and become productive members, of society. So some of our kiddos are living on the street when they come into our program. Some of them, we have a young lady that came in a couple of weeks ago that was living in a storage container in another community here in Payne County, and realized that some other people living there, that she was about to probably be trafficked. And so it took us a couple of months to actually get her into the program. They will spend up to 18 months with us, where we pay all of their living expenses if that's required. We use what's called a scattered site apartment model. So we have apartments that we lease throughout the community, and the young people are required to do what we consider productive activity for 30 hours every week. We're education first. So if they haven't finished high school, we'll either get them enrolled or help them get their GED. We have a lot of kiddos that go on to post-secondary education, job skills, life skills, mental health counseling, substance abuse sometimes, just a lot of issues that these kiddos come in with. Some of them are successful, based on what we would all probably consider success. Sometimes our kiddos have had some really bad examples and learned how to steal to make ends meet, and that's a hard one to help them learn to change. And then another real challenge there is that if you're familiar with a lot of the research on poverty looks at a lot of trade-offs for survival. And so they've often learned in their homes that if this family group has extra food or whatever it might be right now, then what you do is you share it with everybody else, right? Which is a nice idea. And then when you don't have what you need, you'll go to your friends and find that. That's a great part of how homeless folks, learn to care for one another. Where it becomes a challenge for our kiddos is that when we sign a lease in an apartment, the apartment says nobody lives there except you. And so it's really hard sometimes. We have to do a lot of work in counseling with them to help them understand that your mom may be homeless, but she can't live with you, so you can understand how that would be a really tough transition for a kiddo to make. But we have 2 young people right now that will be out of the program in maybe 6 months. They both have very good jobs. They're both working on their FAFSAs and stuff for college. And we're real proud of those kiddos that make those successes. Yes, sir. Sure. So we have 35 employees. That includes the 24/7 shelter operation. At the shelter, we have, management staff, and then we have a lot of folks that work on shifts, so that, it's always covered there. Right now, we have 6 licensed clinicians. My clinical director and I are both state approved supervisors, do that supervision for them. And then we also are an intern site for OSU through probably 7 or 8 programs now. Our clinical programs We usually have 5 or 6 interns that we take every year and send those folks out to a lot of our outlying schools to provide services there in the school system. Gary and I know their clients as if they're our own, so we have a lot of supervision and oversight of those folks. We have probably 3 people that are technically administrative only, our finance director and a couple other folks. And then the balance of the staff are providing group services of all kinds of different natures. Yes. Mhm. We have had very steady referrals for counseling services. It kind of dropped off when the pandemic first started. I think people just didn't know what to do. We tried to reach out through providing information through the distribution of school lunches and stuff, because we suddenly couldn't be in the schools, to make sure people knew we were available. The question was, I'm sorry, about increased rates of depression. So probably around May, we started getting lots and lots of referrals every day for counseling services. Most of our kiddos, and this is generalities, most of our kiddos, they have some depressive presentations, but a lot of it ends up being anxiety responses. They go hand in hand, but for many of our age kids, the anxiety of not being able to impact something, adolescents want to take on the world and be in charge anyway. And so it's really a developmentally expected kind of thing that is going to manifest a little bit more as anxiety. But yes, certainly depression, a lot of anxiety and depressive issues with our parents. We do provide some services for our parents as well. Anecdotally, mental health across the country has known that there would be a spike in child abuse and neglect during the pandemic because of loss of income, lots of stress on parents, fear, all those kinds of things, that if a person is predisposed to act out, that that kind of stress is likely to increase that. The numbers are really hard to gauge right now because we don't have as good of information. A lot of abuse and neglect is identified in the schools. And so with our teachers not being, right there every day with our kiddos, some of those numbers are just not available. It's going to show that as time goes on. I also neglected to mention, we added some new programming online for our kids and for our parents. And so we have 5 standing programs that folks can access on Zoom that are available. And one of the things that we have learned that we want to continue is, if you have a young person, that they live on these things, right? And so we know that the only way we've been able to access those kids where a parent might not be involved in helping that happen is through social media. And one of the things that we actually have a OSU group right now doing some research for us as to what media we really want to stick with. But that's one of the things I think we've learned from this process, is that we want to continue to have that increased presence to get to our kiddos. Yes.
How do you, your staff, keep from becoming so attached to the clients? You can't take a stand.
Right. Right. So the question is, how does staff maintain, I'm going to say, boundaries and things to not be heartbroken every time we have kids come and go and see what happens. Sometimes we're more successful at it than others. We all have kiddos that will stay on our hearts forever. We do a lot of training, intentional training for staff from the beginning of their employment with us to mitigate burnout and help with those kinds of boundaries. What I tell my staff is, in order to really help the kiddo, we have to tell them from the very beginning that we are here for this season of your life, but we're never going to be a part of your real life. And if we don't do that, that young person or family can get attached to us. And so we can really stop their progress if we let them feel like we're going to be there forever, because we're just not going to be. But a lot of training and conversation and open conversations with staff. So I think my time is up. Thank you all very much. Go vote for the talent.
Thank you, Janet, for sharing about the great work that Payne County Youth Services does and provides the community. Stillwater Frontier Rotary supports literacy, so we'll be donating a book to Stillwater Public Library in your honor.
Thank you so much.
You all have information about the fundraiser.